Welcome back, guys, to lecture number 6, where I will be continuing to explore some of the major concepts of the geographic perspective. In the last 2 lectures, I talked to you about location. I talked to you about the concept of place. In this lecture, we're going to be exploring human-environment interactions, or sort of the give and take relationship between humans and the environment, how the environment affects people and how people are influencing and affecting the environment, and the various terminology related to that study within geography. The term human-environment interaction refers to the connection and exchange between humans and the environment. For geographers, this takes sort of 2 different avenues of study. How humans are influencing and impacting the physical world, where geographers will specialize in all kinds of areas like sustainability, or studying pollution, or environmental issues like climate science, all of them focused on how humans are impacting the globe in those areas. But also, kind of from another perspective, geographers are studying human-environment interactions and debating the degree to which human culture and humans are shaped by its interactions with the environment. One of the interesting ways that I've seen this idea of human-environment interaction and how that might vary across the globe, how humans are expected to interact with their environment, I've seen this discussed by teachers with their students through examining Colors of the Wind, right? Looking at a fun sort of Disney song from the movie Pocahontas, if you've seen it, where the human environment interaction perspectives of Native American Pocahontas and her love interest in that cartoon, John Smith, are compared against each other, with the Native American perspective of humans as shepherds, sort of stewards, helpers of the environment, caretakers, contrasting with the Judeo-Christian perspective of John Smith, one of these colonizers recently come to the Americas there, that has a perspective of the earth as something to subdue or have dominion over, for better or for worse. But that's a great example of how different cultures and the people within those cultures can have very different ideas about how humans ought to be interacting with the environment, and why you might see those variations manifested across the globe. And that's something geographers are interested in studying. That whole area of studying, when geographers look at that, is referred to as cultural ecology. All right, cultural ecology refers to the study of how humans adapt to the environment. And it's the idea that different cultural groups sort of modify the natural landscape in different ways, based on regions, based on belief systems, based on the availability of resources. Cultural ecology looks at that, how humans and the environment are interacting and how that might vary from culture to culture. Like Pocahontas's culture versus John Smith's, right? In this image here, you see the neighboring countries of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and the sort of identifiable, kind of visualizable results of differing environmental policies, right? And how those 2 countries envision human environment interactions based on their relative economic situations and available resources, etc. Within the field of cultural ecology, there are 2 main theories that have been popular over the years. Environmental determinism is the older of the 2, and that is, in a nutshell, the belief that the natural landforms and climate of an area are the most powerful forces in shaping human behavior and social development, or shaping human culture, right? That the most powerful force of that comes from the landscape itself, that the environment is the prime determiner of culture, that the environment determines your culture, environmental determinism. Now, up until the 19th centuries, the 20th centuries, and honestly even continuing today, people have used the theory of environmental determinism to argue that people of one climate were superior to people of another. And we'll give you an example of what that argument used to look like in another slide here. The other big theory, and the one that's become the more prominent of the two among modern geographers, is known as possibilism. Possibilism acknowledges that there are limits on the effects of the natural environment on human culture, and it focuses more on the role that human culture is going to play in developing its relationship with the environment, right? That the landscape or the natural environment is only going to affect a group of people so much. And this theory has become sort of more well regarded, in part because you can see it manifest. You can see that different cultures respond to the same environment in different ways, depending on their belief systems, the goals they're trying to achieve, the availability of certain technologies. Different cultures respond differently to the same environments, right? The environment is not the only factor in determining how people interact with those landscapes. Now, environmental determinism isn't always, you know, a racial or sort of like a racist theory or something like that. There are sort of geographers and academics that have studied it in really interesting ways, like Jared Diamond, talking about guns, germs, and steel, takes a really interesting approach to looking at how the environment has played a major role in human history and the distribution of things like technologies, right? Just by the location of people and the environments that those cultures emerged from. But that being said, the more popular of these two theories today, and the one that's, you know, more subscribed to within geography, is that of possibilism. So you can go back to the ancient Greeks, however, and find them making arguments for how the environment was sort of determining whether some groups were going to have all kinds of cultural traits, right? Whether they were going to be more rebellious or submissive based on the climate that they were from, right? People living in the mountains were prone to more kind of rugged, individualistic characters and being more rebellious, and people from the river valleys and lower areas were going to generally be more submissive as far as the ancient Greeks were concerned. Thousands of years later, you can find similar ideas being expressed by geographers from the 1940s. Some Yale-educated geographers, Ellsworth Huntington and C.W. Cushing, wrote in one of the papers that they published the following: the well-known contrast between the energetic people of the most progressive parts of the temperate zones and the inert or unmoving inhabitants of the tropics and even of the intermediate regions, such as Persia, is largely due to the climate. The people of the cyclonic regions rank so far above those of the other parts of the world that they are the natural leaders. These geographers here are making an argument that people from like the Middle East, from hotter climates, from the Caribbean, from, you know, any equatorial region or desert area, that they are going to be less developed, have less sort of material culture and things like that because of the climate and temperature in those areas, right? Makes it too difficult for those cultures to have develop the kind of energetic temperament needed to be an advanced civilization. But as somebody that studies history, this is kind of nonsense, right? One of the things we'll see in this course as well is that where agriculture started, where the first cities started, right? The hearths of these areas and the most technologically advanced civilizations of the ancient world, those places were all in these temperature heavy spots, right? North Africa, Southwest Asia or the Middle East, Southeast Asia, the kind of equatorial parts of the globe, right? So environmental determinism has had many holes shot in it as a theory over the last several decades. pushing more geographers to advocate for the theory known as possibilism, all right, which finds a kind of middle ground there, admitting that while there might be some limitations that begin with nature for certain communities, humans can choose ways to adjust those limitations. And we see that expressed in the many cultures around the world that, although they might live in similar environments, have found distinct ways to respond to those. And as we study culture, more deeply at later parts of the semester, we'll see some strong examples of that. So that concludes the lecture on human and environment interactions, where we discussed the kind of study of cultural ecology and how geographers look at how humans affect the environment, how the environment affects humans, and some of the big theories within cultural ecology, known as environmental determinism, that the environment is the primary determinant of a culture, and the theory of possibilism, that while the environment might place some restrictions on the possibilities for a culture, that culture and group of people and their human ingenuity and creativity is going to find all kinds of different possible solutions to surviving and prospering within that limiting environment. So thanks a lot, guys. I hope that helps you, and I'll talk to you again real soon.